Hello everyone, we have to discuss about that interview editorial analysis 2023 पार्ट 3 देख लेते हैं. Recognition of the impact of the climate changes on the earth. द हिंदू की सोर्स है. Prelims current event of the national importance and intergovernmentals and panels on the climate changes IPCC and Nipah virus and the integrated diseases surveillance program IDSP etc. GSP 1 and GSP 2 and development and management of the social sectors and services related to the health and the education, health in the education etc. Health in the education etc. Education etc. and articles highlighted the list reported released by the Intergovernmental Panel on the Climate Changes IPCCs and the delivered other stake and warnings on climate changes heightened the global risk of the infectious and diseases. India gets the radium for the 28 conferences of the parties into the United Nations Framework Conventions on climate changes on COP28 and insight on the issues. Contact Health WHO. A certain totalities and of the health and to the realms and of the mentals and the social well-beings and happenings beyond physical witness and the absence of the diseases and disabilities. We cannot achieve health in its the widest and definitions and without the addressing health determination. Climate changes vulnerabilities and the climate changes and exclude the pathway and health system and capacities and resistance. Vulnerable factors and demographic and the systems and geographic factors and biological factor and health status and the socio-political condition and socio-economically factors and exposures pathway and the extreme the pathway and event the heats extreme and the air qualities and water the qualities and the quantity and food securities and the safety and the vectors distributions and ecology. Health system capacity and resistance, leadership and governments and health workforce. Information system and the essential medical product and the technologies and the finance and climate sensitive health is risk. Inquiries and mortality and from the extensive weather events and heat and the related health issues. Climate sensitive health risk and the injury and the mortality and from the extreme and weather events. climate changes on the human health. Injuries and the fatality and the asthmas and cardiovascular and diseases, mental health, heat-related illness and the cardiovascular problems and the forced and migration, civil conflict and mental health impact. Cardiovascular diseases, malaria, diseases, encephalitis and the hantavirus and the rift valleys and fevers and Lyme the diseases and chikungunya and West the Nile virus. Respiratory and the algae asthma, cholera, cryptosporidias and the campylobacters and the leptospirosis and the harmful algae bloom. Vulnerable diarrhea diseases. Diarrhea diseases change pattern of the relationship between and the climates and climate diseases and the periodically of the mosquitoes and warn the diseases. An outbreak no longer follow and expected the patterns and the dangers manifestes and on to and on to and the peaks to peaks throughout the years and the variabilities and in the temperature and the precipitations and humidities and the humidities and the disrupted and diseases and variabilities and in the temperature and precipitations and the humidity disrupt diseases transmission cycles, thus alters and the distributions of the vectors and animal reservoirs and that the host the parasites. Heat interfere and with the genomics and structures of the pathogens and changing their the infectivity and the virulence. Impact on India. The integrated and disease surveillance programs and IDSPN was ruled out in the few states in 2007. It is the reputed and 553 outbreaks. In 2008, it lost the reported and 1,714 in the 2017. It was phased out in the favor of other web-enabled and near the real-time electronic information system called the Integrated Health Information Platforms IHIP, and it added 20 additional diseases conditions over the IDSPN 13. It could present the disaggregated data and to its user. The program which has the enabled real times and tracking of the emerging diseases outbreak has not delivered on the expectations. The double burden of the mortality and that India faces from the communications and non-communication diseases will be the worsened by the climate changes impact of the climate changes on the health. Climate changes affected health directly and causing the more sickness and health. It affect the nutrition, reduce the working hours and increase the climate introduce stress. If global temperature were to the rise by the 2 degrees Celsius, many parts of India and would become the unknown habitables. Climate emergencies. Extreme heat and cyclones could and are the expected to the occur with increasing regularities and thus will interfere and with food security and the livelihood and sharpens health challenges. It could facilitate and the growth of the vectors and such as the mosquitoes and the sand flies and ticks and the change the seasonalities of the infections and through the changes in their the life cycle. It could also the facilitate the introduction of the vectors and the pathogen into areas where they did not exist before, such as the mosquitoes in the Himalayas. Stated heat also the alters and the virus of the pathogens and reduce the availability of the food and water. and the decreased in natural and nutritional and value of food increased and vulnerability to diseases, epidemics, and the commonly occurs after flood but extended and warms the period also the promotes the pure proliferations of water and the food worms and pathogens and diseases. Heat physical exertions and the dehydration is the content state for the laborers and could lead to the kidney and the injuries which are the rising in India due to the uncontrolled diabetes, chronic obstructions and the pulmonary and diseases are the exacerbated and by the increasing and the extended and episodes of the air pollution. The risk of dying from the pulmonary and diseases increased by the 1.8 and 8.2 during other heat waves and hospitalizations get hospitalizations and get hospitalization rate and will be up and by the 8% for every 1% increase in the temperature and above the 29 degrees Celsius and depressions and every weighted by the state generated by the change in the weather. In the weather condition at the put in the traumatic stress and disorders and the inevitability accountable a climate's emergency impact on the urbanization. Unplanned urbanization, urban areas are not the tempered and by the urban and greeneries and open the spaces filled with the upfield and the road and heat related retainings and the buildings and then the physically blocked air and circulations and they have the both and in the effect of the climate changes due to the urban heat and is island and affected the urban areas are the weather than the surrounding and rural areas and especially at night. At night, climate changes and puts further the pressure on the weak and urban primarily health systems and already the suffering. The ill effect of the air pollution and urban planning, there the discourage and physical activities and work the related and the culture stress. Way forward. Mitigation effort and begin with understanding the direct and the indirect pathway and which the climate changes impact the health and the asherishings. The orders currently the health information system are not the modified and to the gather this data the benefits. Benefits from the upstream and the interventions and that the focus on the better upper urban planning and green cover and the water conservations and the public health conservations and will be the much larger than only not only and for the health and but for the many determinants of the health. of health. Action to the control on climate changes and need to the happen and aid the global regions and the local level. Purpose of the climate changes and their the impact and will determine in the appreciated areas of the interventions. India has to the recognize and climate changes and its the impact on the health and as other problems and that can be and need to the address and researchers and who work in this areas. These areas and need to come and with the policy and the options and for the rations actions and national state and the local government and have to decided and to the act on the policy and options that have been the generated other research. Research and then the free and esteem of the problemizations and policy options and the political decisions making come and together the meaningful and change is the likely to happen and the question for practice besides being other moral imperatives and of the welfare state and primarily health structures are necessary and the preconditions for the sustainable development analysis UPSC 21 editorial analysis are telco and doubled and deep the attempt and that the threat need and need the neutralities and so the Hindu Plainus government digital India draft Indian telecommunication bill 2022 and mans the GS paper 3 and digital India cyber crimes important aspects of government and e-government accountability etc. Article highlighted the telecom Regulatory Authority of India and TRAI invited a the comprehensive consultation on the need and the possibles and mechanism for the regulation of over-the-top OTT services and inside on the issues and over-the-top and OTT communication services. It is referred to the services and that provide real-time person-to-person telecommunication services. Some popular and example include the messaging platforms like the WhatsApp, Telegrams, and Signal, and Messenger, Google Meets, etc. Issue related to the OTT reductionist approach. OTT services can only be the accessed and through the telecontrolled and infrastructure. Introduction of the OTT communication services under the ambit of telecommunication and services is other reductionist and approach. What are the challenges? Stream platforms and are the free reside readers and benefiting and from the infrastructures and built in the mentioned and by the telecoms companies. It set other dangerous and precedented and that the undermines and the principle of the net neutrality and companies and do not own the internet and rather they provided access to it and consumers pay the telcos for access services by the purchasing data plan by offering services and that the consumer decide. An OTT platform generated demand for the internet and access. Telecom companies and capitalized and on this the demand and the availability of OTT content by providing the connectivity to the internet and charging subscribers and for it the telecoms companies are at the liberty and to increase the prices. Any attempt to seek and cross the subsidies in instead of fully accounting for the cost and current warrant scrutiny and from the competition commissions. If OTT platform were to the acquaintances and to the demand of the tel telcos and the incurred and cost and would trickles down to the subscribers, either through increase the subscription fees or the degraded and services quality for those the platforms unwilling or the unable to pay the toll. This outcome can only be the detrimental and to the consumers and who have to the really on the OTT services and for the entertainment and education and the professional pursuits. OTT services. They compete in their among the market on the basis of the variety and qualities of content. The quality of streaming such as the support for the HD or the better resolution or 5.1 surround sound is in negotiations and the discovery of content and it is the availability on the multiple devices and the consumers pay the price and for thus the benefits is the complaint compared and to the alternatives in the marketplace for the internet access. The consumers are free to choose the providers that the offers them the highest and the brand which and data volumes and the reliabilities and it and the affordable prices. Net neutrality, it is the principle that the internet access provider and must the treat and all the traffic and the organization from the terminating and to the internet in the some ways. Columbia's and law school and professors and Timbu and the coined the terms need the neutrality in either 2003 and paper the titles titled and network neutrality and broadcast broadband and discriminations and net neutrality and promotes and even the playing and field on the internet ensuring that all data is treated the equality and without the discrimination by the internet services provider ISPs. Net neutrality and draws from the early years and notions and principles concerning commons carriage. It posits and there the services to all the consumers and must be the provided on a the non-discriminatory basis. The application of thus the principle to the modern internet and with its the unique technicals and economically characteristics and required and phrase the legals and policy analysis and which and other the provided basis of the try regulation. Net neutrality format the basis of the try and regulations on the prohibitions of criminatory and tariffs and for the data services in 2016 and the regulator action and forced the withdrawals and of the Facebook free basis platforms and some the others offering in India in 2017 trial release. It is the comprehensively recommendation which have the largely guided the adaptations of this the principle in India. The body of the European regulators for electrical commissions and BEREC and the trial adopted a joint statement for and the open internet. The two organizations agreed through this the memorandums and of the understandings to the cooperated in the developing technology and policy initiatives for net neutrality. Many others the countries and have also the adopted net neutrality thereafter. Way forward, it is the imperative and for all the stakeholders, including the policymakers, to recognize the long-term ramifications of the aspiring and to the short-sighted demand of the telecoms companies. For the principle of the net neutrality is not the merely and about the preserving the atoms of and the opens internet and it is the intrinsic to the fostering the conductive environments and for the innovations and companies and the consumer and competition and the consumer welfares and especially countries such as India, where the internet is going to be the carrier of all the digital public infrastructure (DPI). Question for the practitioner discuss different type of the cyber crimes and the measures requirement to be taken to the fight and the manage and UPSC 2020 and what's 200 what's 10 marks and editorial analysis steering road safety in India's and bake into the road right lanes. Thus, Hindu prelims current event of the national important national and automobiles and the scrapages policy. Particulates and matter PM the foundation zero fatalities corridors and JET, FC and programs etc. and main GS paper 3 and infrastructure, energy, ports, road and airports and railways etc. Article highlighted. Each year about the 3,000 people are the estimated to be killed on the road in India. And according to the United Nations World Health Organization WHO, and that is the equivalent to more than the 34 people every hours of every day. And the planet command, commemorated and the World Day of the Remembrance for the road tariff and victims on the November 19 and to provided the platform for the road tariff victims and their the families and insights on the issues. Contact road transportation, it is the dominated and mode of the transport in India and in terms of the traffic and share and in the terms of the condition contributions and to the national economics. Other negative externality of the expansion in road network moto, motorization and the urbanization in the country is the increase in road accident and road crash fatalities. And India is estimated to have about the 22.5 and 22.5 millions and of the live vehicles by the 2025. Major reason for the road accident: infrastructure deficits, negligent and the risk and over the speeding drivings and under the influences of the alcohol etc, distractions and taking over mobile phones and overloading to the save on the cost of the transportation, lack of the awareness and regarding the importance of the safety features and like the air bags and anti locks and braking the system etc, missing in over the inadequate and signatures are the leading causes of road causes. What steps need to be the taken? We need immediately, coordinately, and the evidence-based interventions to boost road safety, drastically reduce the daily humans and dignity behind the alerting stabilities, strategic investment in road safety measures, and converted politicals will be aid the nation, state, and the local level and other charge of the collective mindset. Priority area must includes enforcing the use of the seal belt not just for the delivers and but also for their the passengers wearing a seat belts and it the reduce the risk of death among drivers and the front seats and occupation and by the 45% and to the 50% and the risk of the death and seriously injuries among the road seat occupant by the 25%. Helmet use must be the enforced. Motorcycle as well as there the polians and the passengers and correct helmets and use can lead and to other 42% and the reduction in the risk of the fatal injuries. Speeding must be the reduced and there can be the no tolerated and for drink and drivings and right report by the government and press speedings and lead to the 70% of India crash death. Road infrastructure should be the enhanced to many the road and are not in the safe condition and although the government programs in recent year have led to rapid improvement. Large scale public awareness and competition such as the new UN the global competitions for the road safety and make safety statement it is involved and international celebrities the sustainable development goal created in 2015 it is include either targeted 3.6 and to the hallways the numbers of the global death and the injuries from the road crashes. The national government implementations of the motor vehicles and amendment act 2019 government enhances data collections from road crash and it will the help expert better understanding and where and why the crash and occupying and therefore how to the reduce them. Way forward, India has some of the greatest. India has some of the greatest opportunity to build other strong road safety management and framework. and framework with strong the helmets and the production car manufacture and big tech and the large road investment. Police in the major cities and such as the capital New Delhi are the adopted in the modern technologies such as the intelligence traffic and management system and to the to the effectively regulated tariff and flow in a much and better way and the mining minimizing the potential for the collision to help increase and the access in to the safe helmets to the safe helmet and the special in boy and has the work and with the helmets and produced either low and the cost and the ventilated and the United Nations standard helmeted and for the under 20 including the hair in India's we need to look and increasingly at the international best practices and successes and then adapt then adapted them to the India's and specific need and the circumstances and say road safety is other complex and the multi-dimensional challenges but the benefits and that come and the addressing it can be the equality profounder. There is other there is other need and for other comprehensively safe system approach other advised and in the UN the second decades of the actions and for the road safety in 2021 and 2030 and full implementation for the measures for the motor vehicles and the Amendment Act 2019 and question for the practice investment in the infrastructure is essential for the repeat and the inclusive economically growth discussed in the light of India's experience UPSC 2021 editorial a renewal focus on the emerging technologies and sources the Hindu and science and technology artificial intelligence generating artificial intelligence and big data bands the chat GPTI one tools and the data E2 and etc. And main GS paper 3 and 4 and significant of the technology and for India's and in all the in indigenization of the technology and the development of the new technology article highlighted emerging technology that really on the combination of the cyber technology artificial intelligence unmanaged system and the advanced computings and are in other big among the most militaries the chief of the armies and staffs and the armies and can the identified and by can the identified the chief of the army staff and army had the identified 45 niches technologies in the field of the military applications insight on the contact articles artificial intelligence and it is the brand of the computer science and dealing and with the simulations of the simulation of the of the intelligence and behavior in the computers and it the describes and the action of the machines competing and tasks that have the historically and required and human the intelligence, and it is the included and the technologies like the machines and learning the pattern and recognition, big data and neutrals network, self algorithm, etc. e.g. Facebook and facial recognition software, software, and which is the identified and faces and in the photos, and we post the voice and recognition soft water, and that the transplant plants and recommend we give to the Alexas and etc. are the some of the example of the already and around us. Generative AI, it is at the cutting edge and the technologies advancement, and that the utilizes and machines learning and artificial intelligence and to create new the forms of the medias and such as the text, audio, video, and animations. With the advent of the advanced machine learnings and capabilities, and it is the possible to generate the new and the creative short and long forms, the contact synthetics medias, and even deep fakes with the example task, also the known as the prompt. L the innovations and guns and the generative adversarial network, and LLMS, large language models, and GPT generals, generatives, and pray the trend transformation image generation to experiments and create the commercial offerings, and like the dull e4 image generation and chat GPT, and for the text generation it is can write blogs, the computer code and marketings and copies, and even generated and result for the search inquiries. Background of the defense technologies and development. India first drone platforms and were the indicated in the late 1919 by the armies, and followed by the more procedures in the 2000s by the IEF and Navy through it is the indigenous space programs. And India has launched the communication satellites to improve its the military communication capabilities. G7 seven other Navy specific communication satellite was launched in the 2013, and G7A the IAF in 2018. The government established the Defense Cyber Agency and the Defense Space Agency to address threats from the new demos. Uses of the technology in military under the UDAN, the Indian Air Force and IAF is using the all artificial intelligence, cyber, and virtual reality to address it the operations and logistic and training needs. The Navy is using the integrated unmanaged roadmaps. It is the encourage the indigenations and under the project and the swap Lemban. The defense minister and through the aisle deaf and has the showcases. It is the initiative and which the includes the defense all the councils and the defense all the projected agencies. They are the aims and towards the end corporating and AL into the various style allies. Organizations such as defense services, defense public sectors and undertaking, and the defense research and development organization, and what step an India needs to take. The ministry and the services need to the things and more the creatively and about their the approach and to the emerging technologies. The military must be the recognizant, and that the technologies is not other silver bullet and could not be the imaginated and as other plug and play readily adjusted and to the existing practices. It need to be the accompanied and by the organizations and doctrinal changes, and the willingness and to share data and with the civilian environment ethical issues and with all super intelligence, business accountabilities, and the safety ethically issues, and with ALI safety moralities and the awakening of the integrities. Lack of the consciousness, a way forward, jointness, and defined as the interoperabilities and between the three and services and remains problematically in the chief of the defense staff and has and the exempt lights and mandate to create the joint theaters commands. The need for the interoperability and is the essential, especially among the host and of the emerging technologies. There is a need to the revisits and exciting human resources practices and the Indian military and priorities, generalizations or the specializations and specialization technology and requires and greater the technology technicals expertise and the services should give extended and tenures and the create promotions. Pathways for officer and intellectually and the inclined and towards this the domains and air the wise and marshals Anil the Golani retired and both the civilians and defense organization and the military and needs to be the more open and with the sharing data to fully the release the promise and of the artificial intelligence create the structure and with the educated and safeguard and which the allowing civilians to work and the alongside the military and to overcome and such the concern and fully releasing the potentials of the emergence and technologies and required the alterings exciting organization and the approaches. Such changes should begin and from the defense ministry and instead of the latings and its the effect and be led by the generalized and officers the ministry and should be the more open to the incorporating the techno created and the qualified personals and if the necessary from the private sector and wider industry and this is the especially and garmane and in the defense productions the military must create a pathway and not just and for its the avans and officers and but also to allow the civilians and to work the alongside and them as the technology and professionals. It is need to the think and creativity about the need for separation credit and to tap into the promises of the such and the technologies. Question for the practices what are the different elements of the cyber security and keeping in view and the challenges in cyber security and examine the existence to which India has the successfully developed the comprehensive national cyber security and strategics UPSC 2022. Thank you guys, bye bye. This अक्टूबर एडिटोरियल कंप्लीसेशंस देख लेते हैं 2023 का. The Rajghat concessions and the sources Indian Express prelims and freedom struggles and role of the Gandhi and during the freedom struggle and Gandhian face and Delhi declaration etc. Main GS paper 1 and 2. The freedom struggle significance event the Gandhian face and unity the communals and harmony except article highlighted. The New Delhi G20 declarations and was the result of other remarkables diplomatic and the speed works and led by the India and that got the Russia's China's and the best to the agree to sign on other statement and eight other time and when they agree on the practically nothings and inside on the issues and contact measure highlighted of the New Delhi declaration proclaim preambles and we are one earth and one the families and we shares and one the futures and one and the concessions and declarations called for the comprehensively and just and the duration peace in Ukraine and it the urgent and the members and states to retails to reference and from the thread of US of the force and to six the territorials and accusations or the act and against the territorial integrity of any states. The declaration and state and that the use or the threat and of the US use of the nuclear weapons and to be the inadmissibles and mentions of the prime ministers and mission the life and lifestyles for the environments is the global plane of the action and that the aims to save the planet for the disastrous and the consequences of climate changes strong the sustainable balances and inclusively growth global economic situations. unlocking trade for the growth are ruled and based on the discriminatory and fairs open the inclusively and equitable sustained and transparent multilateral trading system and with WTO and its course and the adoptions of G20 genetic frameworks and for the mapping global value chains. Global value chain. Adaptation of G20 genetics framework of the main global value chain and GVC to help the member identify and risk and the world resilience, preparing for the future of the work and addressing the skills gap and promoting decent and work and the ensuring inclusive and social protection policies for all the advancing financials and inclusion the 2023 and update to leaders on progress and towards the G20 and remittances and targeted and endorse the regulatories and toolkits and for the enhances digital financials inclusions of micro smalls and mediums enterprises MSMEs fighting corruptions and commitment to zero tolerated for the corruptions. The three G20 high levels and principles on the strengthening and law enforcement related and international cooperations and the information sharing for the combating corruptions, straining assets recoveries and mechanism for the combating and corruptions and promoting integrity and effectiveness of public bodies and authorities and responsible for the preventing and combating corruption. In combating corruptions and strengthening global health and the implementing and one health approach, strengthening the global health articles architectures and with the World Health Organization WHO it's the core buildings and more the resiliences equitable sustainable and the inclusive health system to achieve the universal health coverage and implemented one health approach that enhances the enhance pandemics and preparedness, strengthen exciting the infections and diseases surveillance systems, finance, health and collaboration and strengthening the global health architectures for pandemics and preventions and preparedness and the response and PPR through enhances the collaborations and between the finance and the health and ministries under the joint finance and the health task forces and JFHTF and delivering the quality education including the equalitables and high qualities educations and skill the training for all the including and for those in the vulnerable situations recognition the importance of the investment in supporting humans and capital development. Culture as other transformatives and drivers of the SDGs and full the recognition and the protection of the culture and with its the intrinsic values and as other transformatives delivers an enablers and for the achievement of the SDGs and the advanced the inclusions of culture as other standalones and goals in the futures and discussion on other possibles post 2030 development agendas. Green development passed for other sustainable future and recognizing that the prosperities and well-beings of the present and future generation depended on the ours current development and other the policies choice and actions resolve to pursue environmentally and sustainable and inclusive economically growth and development in and the integrated holistics and balanced manners microeconomically risk and stemming from the climate changes and transmission transitions pathways The importance of international dialogues and cooperation, including in the areas of the finance and technology, and timely and policy action consistencies and with the country specific circumstances, and designing other circular economic world that critically the critical role and played by the circular economic extended producers and responsibilities and the resources efficiencies in achieving sustainable development. The Rajghat consensus, the agreement among all the leaders and who stood in the respectful silence, and that the Mahatma Gandhi value matters in 2023 more than the 150 years after he was the born, and they matters today and more than ever, and that the although and thus value are the universal, and there is also the unique and distinct and Indianness and about them. The bows of Gandhi, India independence leader Mahatma Gandhi, and the responses virtues of the non-violence and trust, peace, and the simply. Ahimsa, Satya, and Ishtimas, and Brahmacharyas, and the appreciation, and the Sri Tamau, and Aswadha, and the Sarvastha, and Bhayatvara. Mahatma Gandhi was the great apostle of the peace and the most imprising and symbols of the non-violence struggle against the appreciations and the discrimination in the modern eras. The Mahatma Gandhi was nominated several times, including in the 1937 and 1938, 1939 and 1947, and but did not receive the prize. Novel community argument. Gandhi was the different from the others, and he was no real politician or the proponent and of the international laws, and not the primarily and the humanitarians and relief workers, and not on the organizers of the International Peace Congress. His criticism in the community said Gandhi, although a good novelist and aspective person, and was given to the sharp turns in his policies, which made him both either freedom fighters and either dictators and the idealist and either nationalist. His ideas were not the universal, and his the strength in the South Africa was on behalf of the Indian only and not of the blacks. No posthumous and the considerations, and Gandhi did not belongs to an organization and had not the left and a bill. So it was the nuclears and who would the receive the prize money. However, some experts and give the reasons, and that up to the 1916 and a Nobel Peace Prize, and was the awarded almost and the exclusively and to the European and Americans, and also the community didn't want to be on the wrong side of the British government by the awarding Gandhi. Gandhian value in today and the world, the self and the inner effacement, and was part of the cues and itself the best of the Bharat or the India's the best of the our humanity. Humanity is the what is the optimized and by the Mahatma and navigated US and the towards freedom. His idea of the individuals and role in the society and the frailty and of the what it is to be the humans and the moral power of the doubt, and they are the endurings and the principles, and they're the defined leaderships and the public services. Mahatma experimented and with the truth give up give use the perfect and pauses and to find ours the ways. His shift and the tentatives and voice and finds and the echo and down the ages in the ahimsas and peace, truth and swaraj and the sarvodayas and even the sarva and sikshas and French returns and Romans and Roland. Mahatma manners and was the gentle and the courtiers, and even when the dealings and with the advertiseries, and he is the modest and the unassuming, and yet you feel his the indomitable and spirit. Mahatma was the unconscious and builders and compromising in his the integrity and it the deeply aware and that he needed to the bring and bearing the side and together PM formulations and this is not and the eras for the war finds such in the echo and because it is the draws and strongly from the Mahatmas and code of the non-violence way forward. Mahatma moral compass and brought all the world and leaders together in New Delhi and Albert Einstein and described as leaders of his the pupils unsupported by any the outwards and authority a political politicians and whose success is reached and not the upon craft and not the mystery and of the technical devices but the simply on the conveniencings and power of his the personality the victorious and fighters and who had the always and scorn the use of the force a man who has the confronted and the brutalities and of the Europes and with the dignity and of the simple human beings and the generations and to comes and build the scars and the belief and that the such a as one as this the even in the flesh and the blood and the worked and upon the health question fraud practices and many voices had the strengthened and the enriched and the nationalist movement during the Gandhian phase and the elaborated and UPSC 2019 how does Indian society maintain it continues in traditional social values enumerated the changes taking place in it criminal law bill and a the holo and the decolonizations प्रिंसिपल आईपीसी एंड सीआरपीसी भारतीय न्याय संहिता एंड द भारतीय नागरिक एंड सुरक्षा संहिता एंड भारतीय सक्शियाज एंड बिल इंडियन द एविडेंसेस एक्ट डायरेक्ट प्रिंसिपल ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी एक्सेट्रा मैथ्स जीएस पेपर 2 and 4 गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसीज एंड इंटरवेंशंस फॉर द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ वेरियस सेक्टर्स एंड weaker sections and of the society interventions and for their the development and etc article highlighted the central government introduced and three bills in the parliament called the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita BNS 2023 भारतीय नागरिक सुरक्षा संहिता BNSS 2023 भारतीय साक्ष्य बिल BS 2023 they are to the replace and the existence Indian Penal Code 18 Code of Criminal Procedures and CRPC in 1973 and Indian Evidence Act 1872 and the Committee for the Reforms in the Criminals Law in the 2020 and said this thus bills and will bring about the decolonization of criminals. So inside of the issues content major provision of the three new bills. Provision भारतीय न्याय संहिता बिल 2023 and the भारतीय नागरिक सुरक्षा संहिता बिल 2023 and भारतीय साक्ष्य Bill 2023 replaced an Indian Penal Code and 1816 and Criminal Procedures Code 1890. It in Indian Evidence Act 1872 and focus reflects an Indian ethos and justice oriented and enhances and the citizens and protections and modernization evidence and presentations. Section 356 and sections and the replacing the 511. 533 sections and 160 changes and 170 section and 23 and the changes are separated chapters is dedicated and to them the sexual intercourses and on the place of promises of marriage and unemployment etc has been made other new offense and initiating and children into crime and made the punishment women and the children protection priority in criminals. Digital integration expanded and the definitions of the documents and the digitalization of process and video recording electronical event and expected documents include and the electrical and digital records and email etc trials expenditure summary trials and petty offense colonizations it is It is a process of the operations and where the colonizations become the vehicles and for the supreme colonization power to the fulfill and it's the desire decides and the subject questions and the sub the colonial state and remains it's the mercy. Thus in the power have the right and thus right and those the without and must the oblige and colonial state also the considered itself and to the forever and be at the risk of being and victims by the those its rule. It need to the protect it is the oven and not the subjected and who are not the just and the inferiors and but also the substantiates the fundamentals and essences of the colonial law and to the secures and protected the colonial state and not the colonials and issues with the wills and the bill fill the essential and requirements both in the how and they has been the broads about and there the contact the frameworks produced by the them views and citizens and with the such increased suspensions and the mistrust and there the state appear to the almost and be in the oppositions and to the decisions citizens bills severely comprises and pupils and the simultaneously and arms the state against and citizen all proposed changes and to the BNS organization crime false information and paradising sovereignty and etc endangering endangering and the sovereignty and tourism arts are overboard. Many of the new offenses are already covered by the exciting laws either under species laws of the Indian Penal Code and adding and the additional layers of the criminalizations and therefore does nothing except and increase the policies and powers. Bharatiya Nagrik and Suraksha Sanhita and BNSS it's allow the police and custodies and for period and longer than is allowed under the current criminal procedures and code. Some provision of the BNS and such as the terrorist and act allow the policies and powers and that are the significantly and borders than even those under the harsh and laws and such as the unlawful activities and the prevention act significant the new laws aim to the expandized and justice the delivery while the protecting citizens right and addressing modern challenges the emphasis accountabilities and digitalizations and justice rather than the mere punishments and in my 2020 and the experts community and led by the Randhir Singh was established to the propose and reform in the realm of the criminals law way forward standing orders and that could have been the included in the Sanhitas and with respected to accused and in the videography and the photography of the post-mortem and particularly in cases and where it is the custodial and death and or is either death and accuses in and the exchanges of fire and with the police and or the others and authorities the Supreme Court and the National Human Rights Commissions and have the really repeatedly and asked state to the comply and with such the instrumented the observation of the court to make the sport the sketch and of the sketch of the crime drawn on the scale by the draftman in order to make it the admissible in court. It could also be the included in the Sanhitas and to improve the qualities of investigations. Increasing terms of the punishment and across the board and is the BNS and does the while abordings and police and powers and borrow the heavily and from the logic of colonial criminals law. India severely and the overcrowded prisoners and the implication on the policings and are the either known the considerable or the overlooked and consideration. The narrative of decolonization surrounding the bills and must not be seen in the isolation from the development in other areas of the criminal law and that are the contemporaneously and pushing us the back and into the colonial way and the outcomes of the lawmakings and for example law such a Criminal Procedures and Identification Act 2022 and which the authorized the police and to take the measurement of the convicts and accused and the events and those that take us and into the custody of the preventions and detentions. It's the further the aim of the colonizations and increasing the surveillances of the populations and increase the control and by the state and some of the proposed and changes are the definitely progressive in nature and but cannot be the terms as the path breaking or radicals and police station are generally under the staffed and have the poorest mobilities and efficiency insufficient training infrastructure and poor housings and facilitated police personal works and under the stressful conditions the colonial mindsets and will go only if police reformations and is taken up in its the entirety and not just by the tweakings and some the provision of the applicable laws and question for the practices. Constitutional morality is rooted in the constitutional itself and is it's the founded and on its the essential and faceted and explain the doctrine of the constitution morality and with the help of relevant judicial decisions UPSC 2021 21 and 10 marks editorial analysis. India need to relook the Dam Safety Act, the Hindus prelims and current event of the national importance. Environment pollutions and degradations and Dam Safety Act and glaciers like the outbursts and food and GLOF the Lunak Lake and Central Water Commission the CWC and Joshi Math and Tisla Law Dam and Paris Agreement, etc. GS Papers 3 and Conversation, Environmental Pollution and Degradations and Solar Energy and its use in the different sectors and particularly agriculture, etc. Articles highlighted. India has the almost and 6,000 large dam and about the 80% of them are more than and 25 years and old and the carry safety risk and Dam Safety Acts and DSA was passed in the late 2021. Insights on the issues and conduct. Dam Safety Act objectives the act and provided for the surveillances and inspections and operation and the maintenance of all the specified dams and across the country. Thus are the dam and with the height more than 15 meters or height and between the 15 meters and 10 meters and 15 meters with certain the design and constructions condition in structure conditions. It is provided for the institutional mechanism to ensure the safety of the dams, such dams. Institutional mechanism to international levels bodies. The National Committee on the Dam Safety (NCDS) and which is improved the policies and recommendation regulations regarding dam safety standard. The National Dam Safety Authorization (NDSA) which implemented policies of the NCDA and provided technical assessment to state dam safety organization SDSOS and the resolve disputed and involving and the SDSO to state level bodies and SDSOS and will keep the perpetuate and surveillances inspect and the monitor and the dams. The state committee on the dam safety supervises and the state dam and the rehabilitations and programs and review the work and for the SDSO and the progress on the measures and recommended in relation to dam safety among others. Obligation of the dam owners. Dam owners will be the responsible for the dam constructions and operations and maintenance and supervisions of other dam. They must provide other dam safety unit in each the dams and which will the inspect the dam before and after the monsoon seasons and during the after every earthquakes and flood and calamities or any the sign of the distress. Function of the dam owner and include preparing and the emergencies and action plan, carrying out risk and assessment and studied at the specified regulars. Interval preparing the comprehensively dam safety evaluations and through the panel of the experts and offenses and the penalties. Anyone obstructing either person in the discharges of him the functions and under the act or the refusing to the companies and with the direction and maybe the comprised for other years in case of the loss of the life and the person may be the imprisoned and for the 2 years. Recent glaciers and outbursts, glacier lake outbursts and flood the GLOF and in the north and Sikkim and south the Lonak Lake. It was the washed away and one of the biggest and hydropowers and project in India and the Tesla's third and dam at the Chungtang and what do the status and need to do. DSA required and status and to the classify and dams and based on the hazard and risk. The conduct regulars and the inspections and created the emergencies action plans. Institutes an emergency and flood warming system and undertake the safety reviews and the period risk assessment studies. States were the asked to report and record incident of the dam failures and until now and know the statutories and provisions require and the systematically reporting of the failures and know the single agencies was tasked and with the tracing was the tracking this data and the CWC and keeps other record and but the list it is not the updated regularly. Is any action taken for the failing to the comply? Failure to comply and with any the provision of the act is the punishable and with the imprisonment or the fines and if the such constructions or the refusals and to the comply with the directions result in loss of the lives and or the imminent and danger there of the entity and shall be the punishables and with the imprisonment and for other terms and which may the extended to 2 years. For example, Sikkim High Court and orders and the Ghati hydropowers and project and company to pay the 70 lakh and to the widowed and mothers and for non the compliances and with the Dam Safety Act and challenges the DSA does not the promote and risk based decisions making and fail to the incentives. Transparency and the Hindu, Himanshu and the Thakkar and environmental activities and coordinators of the South Asian network on the dam rivers and pupils. And shares that the frequency and scales of the such and disaster reveals are the pattern of the neglected. It is keep the happenings regularly pupils and face the distress consequences and be call. Thus the natural disaster and but there's the nothing and naturals about them a robust. DSA should allow the different stakeholder to access the information easily and but India framework and fails the show dam safety is other public purpose. Function everything about the dam safety and functions of all the institutions and the committees and authorized and there the report decision and minimum and agendas and everything and should be the promptly and available to the public and transparency is further and obstructed and when the national and the state bodies and comprise the government employees and the engineers and who worked on the project comprising compromising and objective decision making and lag the pupils and with other province and track and record of the taking independence and decisions. Way forward dam safety is other functions of many parts and decisionings and constructing dams and that the adheres to safety margins maintaining and the operating them per the guidelines and recordings data in real time in and the accessibly and formed, forecasting hazards and event and the instituting emergency and plans. The systems and globe the reveals and pours the compliance at all the levels, from the dam design to the spillway capacity, which control the release of the water from the reservoirs, and the hazard and the profilings and the regular assessment are also the mandated by the act. Hazard risk and the fluidize it the slightest and touch the responsible to climate changes, urbanization and the bay peoples and companies and use water or the wares and they are the located. Periodically review are expected to bring forth the fresh and the inundations and maps and new the rules curves which determines the capacities of the dam and reservoirs, all of which the contributed towards the safety of the downstream and areas the spillway and capacities and the other metrics and the should be the revised and every 5 years or so. Mr. Dumlin stated and the act and the request and them the builders to conduct the comprehensively and dam safety evaluations, and but there is no the standardization of how the failures is analyzed and the reported question for practice. Decline the various causes and the effect of the landslide and mention the important component of the national landslide risk management strategy UPSC 2021. Editorial analysis. A bar there the end and the Saudi Israel's and normalizations process. Prelims and current event of the international important and West Asia's and Saudi Iran conflict and the Arab League and OPEC and OPEC Plus and G20 etc. and GS papers 2 and the bilaterals and regionals and global groupings and agreement involving the India or the effective India interestings. Article highlighted Hamas launching and the Lithium attack on the Israel. The assault has the firmly and the over and the tornaded and the Israel effort supported by the United States to promote other normalization of the relations with Arab state and without the conceding and anything to the Palestinians and the inside on the issues contact the Israel-Palestine conflict. Occupied Palestine territories, Mediterranean Sea, West Bank and Palestine cities, Lebanon, occupied Golan Heights and Syria, Jordan, Israel, Egypt, Gaza Stream, non-functionals, Desert Lake, Jordan. It is dated back to the end of the 19th century and is one of the world's most the enduring conflict and with the Israel occupations of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The Israel and the Palestine conflict is complex. It is the rooted in the national political, territorial cultures and the regional factors. The core issues is not just about the land and it is about the having the rights and to the self-determinations. Abraham record and they are the series of the agreements signed in 2020 between the Israel and the several Arab states marking other historical shift in the diplomatic relations in the Middle East. The accord were named the Abraham Accord in the references to the support common ancestors and of the Jews and the Arabs. The Biblicals and the Abrahams and as an expansion of the brotherhood. The primarily countries involved in the Abraham Accords include the Israel, United Arab, Israel as other key parties, and to the record, Israel agrees and to the normalize and the diplomatic relationship with the participating and Arab nations and making other significant departures from the historicals and hostility relationship it is had with the many Arab states, United States Arab Emirat UAE. The UAE was the first Arab countries and to the formally announced and it is the normalization of the relations with the Israels under the Abraham Accord and it is included the established of full the diplomatic relations as well as the economic, technologically and cultures exchanges. Bahrain. Bahrain and followed the UAE and lead to the sign of the similar agreement and with the Israel's the Bahrain-Israel peace agreement also the compasses and diplomatic relation and comparatively comparison in various sectors. Sudan joined the Abraham Accord by the agreeing to the normalizing relation with Israel to lead the remove of the Sudan and from the US list of the state sponsor of the terrorism. Morocco joined the accord and with other commitment to the normalizing relation with Israel. The agreement included the United States recognition of Morocco and the sovereignty over the Western Saharas in the exchanges of the Moroccan engagement with Israel. What does Israel Prime Minister and made the depictions and aid the United States General Assembly signifies? And solutions Israel in 1948 and while the others shows Arab neighbors and that now had peace agreement and with Israel, Egypt, Sudan and UAE, United Arab Emirates. Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Jordan. All the occupied Palestines and territories, the West Banks and Gazas and East the Jerusalems and the integral part of the Israel and diplomatic relations between the Israel and the Saudi Arabia. America and Israeli officials armed and that the board control bid counters of the agreement have been the finalized and to the Israel minister and visit the Saudi Arabia for international conferences and conditions and for the deals by the Saudi Arabia and US the approvals and for other citizens nuclear programs and that the provided for the uranium and the enrichment and the within the country and the irons clad US security guarantees and for the countries and sales of the advanced weapons and the condition by the US the Saudi Arabia back and US interested on oil prices and dilute it is the politically military and the technologically ties with the China's and deeper and strategically engagement and with the US Israel and the US politician reactions and opposed the idea of the giving security and guarantees to and the authoritarians and state and they the warned the US president against the Saudi Arabia developing its own the nuclear program it poses and the unacceptables and the proliferations and risk is the concern shared by the Israel as well. US the sale of the advanced and weapon due to the Saudi Arabia poor human and right and record aid the homes and in the Yemen and Saudi instance insisted that the arms supply and by the companies and by the transfer of technologies and to develop its the arms industries. Saudi Iran ties normalized and under the Chinese meditations and embassies and has been the reopened in the both capitals and high levels. The visitor has been the extended and economic cooperation is being the expanded. Standard of the Saudi Arabia after the Israel-Palestine presence conflict, Saudi recognized there the peace and the stabilities in the regions and are not the possible without the Palestinians interested and being the address on Saudi crown proud and kingdoms will the stand by the Palestinian peoples to achieve their the legitimated and rights to the descents and life and achieving their the hope and the aspirations and there the achieve just and the lasting peace way forward. Saudi journalist and Faisal Abbas international community must act now and to the activist it is a critical peace plans and that the enables a two-state solutions over the last few years and kingdoms and was the pursuits and it is the foreign policy engagement in the terms of its own the interested and without any the US involvement and the kingdoms and reject the US interested and in the buildings and the anti-China coalitions and globally and anti-Irans and cables regionally, and regardless of the U.S. wishes on the question of the Saudi Arabia recommendatings and the Americans and on oil and prices or the dilutings, and it's the comprehensively strategically ties on with the China's the exemplify fly, and it is the assertions of the strategics and autonomy and the integral and part of is the quest for the diverse and multifaceted and the substantial ties and across the Asia and promoting the Palestine's causes and bill now and forms. And the important part of this the foreign policy approach and questions, and how will the 12 U12 and India, Israel and UAE and USA and grouping the transform India positions in the global politics UAPSC 2022. Editorial analysis the pragmatism. Indian Express. Current event of the international importance and West Asia and Israel, the Palestine conflict and the Ukraine Russia's conflict and NATO UCOS and the Mediterranean and Sea the mapping etc. and GS paper 2 in the bilateral region and global the grouping and the agreement involving the India or the affecting the India interactions and articles highlighted the Russia invasions of the Ukraine and led to other really affected in the Europe and two traditional neutrals and nations the Finland and the Sweden joined NATO and Europe double down to the back Ukraine inside on the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Israel-Palestine conflict and Greek Java, Israel, Jordan and Egypt, Bang and Israel, Syria, self-passenger non-functionals. It is dates back to the end of the 19th century and is one of the world and most the enduring conflict with the Israel occupations of the West Bank of them and the Gaza Strip. The Israel-Palestine conflict is the complex. It is the rooted. It is the rooted and in the national politicals and territorials and the cultural and the religion factors. The core issues is not just and about the land, and it is the about having the rights and to the self determination and Abraham Accord. They are other series of other agreement and signed in the 2020 between the Israel and the Sheval Arabs state, marking other historicals and shift the diplomatics and relations in the Middle East. Accords where the name and Abraham put in references into the supposed common the ancestors and of the Jews and the Arabs and the Biblical Abraham as an expansion of brotherhood. The primary country involved in the Abraham Accord and include the Israel and is other key party of the accord, and Israel agreed to the normalizing diplomatic relation and with the participating and Arab nations and markings other significant departure and from the historical hostile relationship and it had with the many Arab states and United Arab Emirates. UAE was the first Arab countries and to the formally and the announced and is the normalizations of the relations and with the Israel under the Abraham Accord, and it is the included the established of full the diplomatic relation as well as the economically, technological and cultures exchanges. Bahrain and the followed the UAE and the lead by the signing the similar agreement with Israel. The Bahrain Israel peace agreement also the compasses and the diplomatic relation and occupations in various sectors. The Sudan joined the Abraham and the Accord by the agreeing and to the normalizing relation and with the Israel. It lead to the removal of the Sudan and from the US and list of the state sponsors of the terrorism, and the Morocco joined the accord and with other commitment to the normalized relation and with the Israel. This agreement included the United States recognition Morocco sovereignty and over the Western Saharas in exchanges for the Morocco engagement with Israel. US again in Asia. encouraging Japan to the ramp and bid up is depend expenditure to counter China's and promoting the normalizations of ties and between the Tokyo and the Shoals and renewing defenses cooperation with the Philippines and the sign is a strategic partnerships and agreement with the communist and Vietnam. The unveilings and the AQUAs and partnerships and with the Australia and the UK and trainings, the Quad and enhancing the bilateral ties and with India and expanded in the military support and for the Taiwan's and is the rising the causes, the course of other potentials and Chinese invaders. What does US foreign policy establish? The US should focus on the countering China's and rather than the wasting the energies in the Ukraine, and it is the instead that the Europeans should take the greater responsibilities to counter the Russia's invaders of Ukraine. The strong bipartitions and political concessions in the favor defending Israel, and some the questions the U.S. uncritical and support for the Israel the prospect and that the demand Donald Trump and might win the president has the generated possibilities and for other return to the isolated and what US the strategic resiliences and cannot be the underestimated and moderate the extreme domestics and argument and the strain and the sustains the pursuit of the essentials and US the interested worldwide. US declined the tend to be the outstand and the US shares of the globals and GDP continued to be the around and 24%. The best and shares of the GDP and has the decided and the substantives and groups in the Europe share. The current slowdowns and in the Chinese economics and suggested it will be other long whiles if it all the before the China's and overtakes and Washington's in the aggressions and GDP and on the military count and the US continued and to the spread more on the defense than the next and 10 countries and combined including the China's and the India's and none of the other the power and can the project military power in the manners the US does. The crisis in the Middle East and the US deployed and the two aircraft and carries in the Eastern and Mediterranean and on the diplomatic front the US has been able to the insert and itself directly and at the highest level in the Gaza war. While while China and the Russia have the offered and the usual promoted the US has no more leverages and then the other majors computer adjust Maver's power and with both the Arabs and the Israelis and the structures of the great powers and conflict the favors the US. Although Russia and the China's have been the gotten closer than before. Then before both are the eager and to work out separated and deal with the US for Russians and China's and it is the question of the terms and not other matter of the ideological principle. The US has the domestic problems and the China's and Russia's has their the oven. The strong man rules in the Moscow and Beijing and may mask those the difficulties and but can't hide them. Way forward, the US can the always take other detached view of the balances of the power in Europe and Asia and with minor and tweaks in its the policy it is can the exploited and the many contractions and among the major powers of the Eurasias. The greatest US advantage and is it's the system of the allegiances that the Western outguns and the coalitions and that the Russias and the Chinas and have the shot to the constructor and the Biden administration has made other decision consecutive decisions to look beyond its the traditional and alliances by strengthening and those who have other stake in defending themselves against the China. The US has the enhanced and the Asia's deterrent capabilities and against the China's the US national security advertisers and Jack the Sullivans and the range of the countries and the supporting the Washington including those with diverse the political system. Sullivan and the formulations and is not a the deliberations and from the ideologies of the democratic and the promotion. The question of the democratic value and remains the central to the U.S. foreign policies discourse. U.S. conduct of the international relation has been the pragmatic and when it's the come and to its the core and interested for the question how will to 12 due to Indian, Israel and UAE and the USA and grouping the transform India the positions in the global politics and UPSC 2022 editorial analysis reform can the address in India the kidney and the transplant deficits. The Hindu prelims current event of the national and importance and WHO kidney and the transplants and organ and transplant chronics and the kidney diseases and CKD and the state renals and the diseases and ESRD and the transplantations of the human organ and tissues Act 1994 etc. and GS paper 1 and 2 development and the management of social sectors and the services related to the health and the education etc. article highlighted in 2022 over the 2 lakhs patients and needed a transplant and but there were the only about 7,500 transplant about the 3.4 and 3 the point 4 and the inside on the issues and contact what organ can be the donated, which organs and can be the donated and percentage refers and the 9% bones and 11% pancreas and 15% intestines and 17% bones and 30% skins and 33% lungs and 68% liver, 86% heart and kidney, 98% and 99% eyes and veins. One donor have saved up and to the 8th less by the donation organ and up to the 15 by the donatings and tissues. Follow this the process and to the pledge and your organs. Status and of the organ donation in India's and growing the demand and the persistence and storage shortage. Over 3 lakhs patient and are on the waiting list for the organs donations in India's. The supply of the organ donation and has not the kept and up the with the increasing the demand and approximately 20 individuals and die and daily whilst the awaiting the organ transplant and due to the storage and slow the growth in the donors numbers and including the both living and the deceased and have the shown and slow the growth over the years and from the 6,916 donors in 2014 the count increased to about the 16,041 and in 2022 indicating the modest rise. The deceased organ and donations and rate in the Indias and has the remained and the consistency and below 1 the donors and per millions populations for other decades. Kidney and transplant in India and faces a significant and disparities and between the demand and supply and annuals the demand for the 2 lakhs kidney transplant in meet and with the only around and 10,000 transplants each year and creating other substantial gaps. Demand for kidney transplant and due to the prevalence and of the diabetes and the malnutrition and over the crowdings and the poor sanitation and there is other high and the privileges of the chrono and the chronic kidney disease and CKD and in India and the affecting about the 17% of the populations. CKD and lead to the end and stage and renal and diseases ESRD. A kidney transplant is often the best treatment of the ESRD. Transplant is often the better than the alternatives and on the almost all the dimensions that the matter and quality of the water life and the patient convenient life expectancies and cost the effectiveness and the United States and the others could carry out about the 20% transplant and where the patient can obtain other kidney and from other descent. decent person there is other contrained and due to other lack of the donations. The particular condition required and on the natures of the disease and infrastructures and needed to other collect and the store kidneys. Request relatives or the friend and to donate the however donor and the recipient and have to be the compatible in terms of the blood and type and the tissues type and such the relatives and donor are often the incompatibles. What step need to be the taken? Regulations and for the kidney exchanges are needed is the kidney exchanges must often the occurs and across family units and regulations and need the urgent and reforms to the uncycles and to the innovatives and kidney exchanges method. Kidney swarms and kidney the chain in kidney swarms and families and demand the nearly and stimultaneous and operations of all the donors and the received since no one wants to the lose either kidney without gaining one in kidney chain. Each patient first receive other kidney and only and then does and there the relatively and donate and thus chain compared to the swarms and involve the significant lower the hospitals and resources and uncertainty for the participant and case kidney on the kidney case study on the kidney sperm and the kidney chain and kidney sperm example of the two strengther and the sunitas and joyas and who need the kidneys and sunitas sperm in incompatibles and with the her and the joya has the some problems. However, if the sunitas is sponsors is the compatibles and with the joyas and joyas the sponsors is compatibles with and swarm donations and are the possibles. Kidney chain case of the Shonu and who is and the altruistic donors and donating and his the kidney and with no the exemption of the kidney in returns. And Shonu donated to Sunita assuming the compatibility. Sunita sponsored donated to Joya and Joya sponsored donated to the some others the compatible persons. Reason for lack of the sperms and the almost no chance in India and sperm the transplanted are the legally allowed and in India's and with due to the permission and but only nears relatives are allowed as donors and received pairs. Exceptions to this the restrictions and are the Kerala's Punjab and Haryana and High Court judgment have the recently allowed and non nears the relatives and donors the received and pairs the after the verifications. Easing the laws and for the swarms and to make them on a the par and with the direct and donations is necessary. Unlike the national and regional and state list and for direct transplant and from the cadavers, there is no the national coordinating and authority and for the swarms and this is lost opportunity and since the larger and more the diverse and pools make it the easier and to find the compatibles and the swarms. While there are the occasionally and swarm in India and there are almost no kidney chain in all the state and the exempt and Kerala's it is the illegal to the donates and the kidney out of the S altruism and one cannot the start other chain and since the one cannot donated and without getting other kidney and four other family members and return and kidney from the deceased and or the brain dead and are only the used for the direct transplant not for the chain or cycles. Way forward needlessly and harsh law regulating the swarms and change have contributed to other proliferations of the black market and for the kidney and selling is the kidney and to the relief financially distress is other mainstream and the references and thus the black market and endangered all there the despite it and participant since thus the operation are the conducted of the books and without due to the legal and the medical safeguarded and the transplanted of the human organs and tissues act 1994 and set the ball and rolling the recognizing transplanted possibilities and from the brain streams and teeth in the 2011 and amendment the sperm and transplants and where the legalized and other national organ transplant and the programs and was the initiated but the national network remain and the under development. Initially, according to the Transplantation of the Human Organ and Tissues Rule in 2014, swan transplants are the allowed and only for the near relatives. The government recent the reforms and allowed the more flexibilities in the age and domiciles and requirement while the registrating and to the obtained and organs and but thus the reforms and leaves the fundamental issues of the inadequacies and kidney supply largely and unaddressed, and it is the beneficiaries to allow and the encourages the altruistic donations and non-near the relatives and donations for the swamps and to improve the kidney exchanges infrastructure. India does not need to the involving in orders to reform the chain and the swamps and sufficient procedures have been get globally. Australia, Canada, Israel and Netherlands, the United States among the others, and now allowed the altruistics and donations, and Spain and the United Kingdoms and have national legals registries for the kidneys and chain and the swamps. The US has the especially and made the programs in the facilitated thousands of the swamps and chains. The Spain even has the international collaborations and for the kidneys exchange. India reals the challenges and therefore is to be the learn and from the replicated and such the exciting and successful regulations to the improve the lives of the several thousands of the citizens. Question for the practices. Besides being other moral imperatives and of the welfare state and primarily health structures is other necessary and preconditions for sustainable development analysis. UPSC 2021 and 200 words and 10 marks. Editorials analysis. Don't be the guided by the short term political gain and sources. And Indian Express prelims. Elderly population in India's an scheme for the old ages and pupils and OPS, Provident and funds the pension schemes and EPFO and etc. As GSP per 1 and 2 the scheme for the vulnerable sections of society and the formula for and the performance and the issues associated with the thus schemes etc. Article highlighted the demand for the returning and to the old pensions schemes is gaining the transactions several states such as the Rajasthan and the Chhattisgarh and the Jharkhand, Punjab and the Himachal Pradesh have already announced other shift back to the OPS. Insights on the issues. Insights on the issues and contact. Elderly and the populations, the national elderly policies and the defining the pupils in the 16 plus ages and growth as the elderly and the according to the populations and census 2011, and there are the nearly and 104 the millions elderly and person in India. Old pensions scheme and OPS and the schemes and issues. The schemes ensures and lifelong income and post the retirement, and employees the get other pensions under other retirement and formulation which is the equipment to 15% of the last 12 salaries. They also get the benefits of the revisions of the dearness reliefs and DRs and twice a year. The payout is fixed and there was no the deductions and from the salaries under the OPS, and there was the provision of the general provident and funds and GPF is available only for all the government employees in India. It is allow all the government employees and to the contributed other certain percentage of their the salary to the GPF. The total amount and that is the accumulated and thought out the employment terms is paid to the employees at the time of the retirement. The government buyers and is the expenditures and incurred on the persons. The scheme was discontinued in the 2004. Comparisons of the new and the old pensions schemes. Contributed of the employees nil and 10% of the basis plus DA minus NPA. On the prices and dimension relief gives nil. Government stand. The Union Finance Minister has formed a committee headed by the Finance Secretary T.V. Somanathan and to look into the issues and of pensions and the committee and bill the considers if any the changes and are the needed to the NPS framework to the improve the pensionaries and the beneficiaries benefits and while the ensuring the fiscals and the prudences and the state have short and the insurance and pensions and that is the linked to the minimums and levels of the pay and not the last drawn and salary as it's the stood under the old pensions schemes and another model reported combining the elements of the old pension schemes and the new pension schemes under this the frameworks and there was other both and defined contributions by the employing and the defining benefits issues any structure based seeks to the provided assures and return even if they are the lower than the those and under the OPS could be moving backward and the burden of the fulfilling any defined benefits and with will fail on the government and according to the recent study by the RBI and the burden of the switchings and back would be the roughly and 4.5 and 4.5 and the times and that of the NPS addition burden reaching the 0.9% and 0.9% of the GDP and the annually by the 2016 and the allocations and towards the pensions already account for other significant share of both central and state government expenditure and as of the much in 2023 NPS and had the 223.8 the 23.8 and lakh central government and subscribers and the 60.7 and lakh state government subscribers step taken by the government the six pay commission had the substantially and the increase the basic salary of government employees to cover the pension contributions and promotes savings for the post retirement expenses the basic monthly salary of other class for the employees the 7 pay norm is 25,000 the salary of a government employees is other higher than the income of the more than the 90% of the population challenges associated with the OPS. Many state government have aid to the employment and the 7 pay norms and the whereas the some state and have the reportedly and not paid the appears and of the 6 pays and state government do not have the fiscal authority. The bottom 50% of the populations and bears the inequality and burdens of the indirect and taxations and 6 times more than their the incomes due to the OPS the bottom of the pyramids and populations and with other monthly income and much less than that of government employees and has to bear the burdens and the median age of the Indian populations is the approaching and 30 years the population compositions in many states and will the becomes and orders over the next 2 or 3 decades. Public division of the education and the health care is the indispensable and to the harness and the demographics and the dividend. The recruitment and with the OPS and poses the expenditures and changes and for the providing the public goods and the providing a the large population of basic necessities. OPS competes and government to compress and the already low social sectors and expenditure pushing the marginalized and into other downward spirals of the indigenous and changes expenditure the pensions schemes the some exchanges regarding the EPS and after the Supreme Court judgment before the pension coverage the extended in the 2014 to the employees and the drawing the salaries more than the 15,000 per month subject to two man members the contributing and at the rate of the 1.16% and on the salaries is exceeding and the 15,000 per month and employees the should have the exercise and often the 6 months from initiative by the government for the elderly Pradhan Mantri Baya Bandhana Yojana Biosrestha Samman and Indira Gandhi National Old Age Pensions Scheme IN inaugurated gaps, an initiative by the government integrated the programs for the older persons. IOPOI, राष्ट्रीय बयोश्री योजना RBY, Varishtha and Pension Bhima Yojana and BVPBY and way forward are written and to the defined at the benefits in the whatever and forms the could thus have the adverse and fiscals the implication for the government. It would leave and less the space and for the more and productions and forms of the spending. Government must the resist the temptations and of the short term fiscals and the policies gains and the take into the consideration for the long term implications of the policies. Oppositions to the OPS should not be other weapons and for the drawings the government but used to the argues and for other more and equitable and distributions of resources and expansion of the universal provisions of public goods. The participatories and the pension for the government employees and bill the provided other norm more more egalitarian and the outcomes in one in and the economic with the acute income in the inequality to protect employees, the specialists and those in the lower rung in the hierarchy and the from the vagaries of the market. The government can tweak the NPSs and to the provided other guaranteed monthly returns. Administratives reform are the required and to address the inequalities and pay the amount among the various rank of the employees. Question for the practices and performance of the welfare schemes and that are the implemented and for the vulnerable sections is not so the effective due to the absence and of their the awareness and the active involvement and of it all stage of the policy process and discuss the UPSC 2019 with the reference and to the Indian economic. Consider the following statement. Both one and two. A share of the household and financial saving goes to the towards government and borrowing the dated security issues in the market related and rates in the equations and from the large components of the international debt. Editorials analysis. Aligning and the higher educations and with the United Nations and SDGs. The source in the prelims. Yes, paper 2 and current event of the international important SDG and COVID-19, G20 and G7 etc. and GS paper 2 bilateral region and global grouping and the agreement involving India or the effective India interested significant of G20 countries etc. Article highlight the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals SDGs are the set of the 17 goals and with the 169 targeted and that all the 193 United Nations UN and the United Nations member states have the agreed to try to the achieve by the 2013 and the Sustainable Development Goals and signed on the issues content Sustainable Development Goals SDGs. The Sustainable Development Goal SDGs, also known as the global goals, and were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 and the universal calls to actions to end the poverty and protect and the plants and ensuring that by the 2013 and all the peoples enjoy the peace and the prosperities and it is other set of the 17 SDGs and which the recognize and that the actions in one areas and will the affected the outcomes in others and that the development must the balance social economically and environmental sustainabilities. Countries have committed and to the prioritizing and program for those who are the fourthest and behind. The SDGs are the designed and to end the poverty, hungers and AIDS and the discrimination against the women. The SDGs frameworks and share the targeted for the 231 and unique indicators and across the 17 SDGs goals related to the economically development, social welfare and economical and environmental sustainability and to be the made by the 2013 and the United Nations adopted The 2013 Agenda for the Sustainable Development. It is consists of the 17 goal and 169 targeted as the plan of the action for the purpose, the plans, the planets and the prosperities. The resolution species and mechanism for the monitorings and review and the reportings of the program as other measures of accountability towards the purpose, and member state submits a the voluntary national review and VNR to the UN, the high levels and political forums. HLPF. BLR is the mean for the driving reportings and local implementations of SDGs, and 8. The subnational and the city levels reason for the slow programs in the SDGs, and due to the prolonged effect of the COVID-19, impact of the climate crisis and Russia-Ukraine conflict, and weak global economical impact on the countries, it has been the more pronounced and in the least development countries. India, it has the suffered the setbacks in the achieving those goals. NEP 2020 and SDG for the pertains and to the access to the qualities education, and it is the prerequisite and for the achievement of the goal of the other goals, and NEP 2020 has been the prepared in the tunes with most of the SDGs. NEP 2020 call for the changes, and at all the level of the education and priority should be the accorded and to the higher education, because it is the accelerated social mobility empowered and people through the creativity and critical thinkings grant and them the employment skills. NEP higher education. National Education and Policy 2020 Higher Education. NEP Higher Education and Technology use the integrated and towards the more and the holistic education and higher impact of higher education on the SDGs and OECD and report, and pupils with the higher education and degree are the more employable, and they earn the averages of the 54% and more than those on who only have the completed and senior secondary education. A university and inclusive the education and protected the people against the poverty. And SDG 1 prevented them from the hunger, SDG 2 and the support them for the good health and well-being, and SDG 3 and promoted the gender quality, and SDG 5 and provided them the decent work and derived the economically growth, and SDG 8 reduce the inequality, SDG 10 and the what step the needed to be the taken in higher educations. The universities and should the strengthen the research teaching nexus, and university education student will become the direct beneficiaries of the education generated from the research, and multidisciplinaries and the interdisciplinary and system of the education, and providing the multilateral and pupils who can pursue reach to find the innovation solution to global the challenges such as affordable and clean energies, and SDG 7 and sustainable cities and communities, SDG 11 climate changes and global warming, SDG 13 study there the impact on and the environment and the earth, and radically and changes the way and we provided and the consumer SDG 12 an innovative solution, and startup SDG 9 and the must be the developed in the collaboration and with the private companies, and introducing the values based education and BPE and with the help citizens and become the responsible toward the self securities and planets, and help our the nation achieve the life on the land, and SDGs 15 recent initiative taken by the government. Granted autonomous to the universities and colleges, education qualities upgraded, and the conclusion program equip UGC learning and the outcome based on the curriculums and frameworks, LOCF, All India Survey on higher and the EQ, All India Survey on the Higher Education ISPE. And revitalizing infrastructure and the system in education rise, and national institution ranking frameworks, and global initiative for the academic network GIA. way forward. SDGs and are the matters of the urgency, and the action by all the countries and both the development and developing to end the poverty and other the socio-economically and the environmental problems. Countries should alliances with the strategic and that improve the standard of the life and the education, reduce the inequality and the harmonious and education growth. NEP 2020 demands and that the Indian higher education to the committed to mapping its day-to-day and the operations with the SDGs and ranking the universities, and according to the achievement of the SDGs is other welcome move and but is the still inadequate to meet the SDGs deadline to accelerated the programs and towards the achieve and the 2013 agenda. Stakeholder of the higher education and show to be the educated and the orientated so that none of their activities may and leave any the SDGs behind. Either higher education institution and universities in India should work and together universities and the should comes out and the reinvigorism and the play the part in the education and innovations, culture and civil life of theirs the local communities and communities health energy saving the methods and efficiency resources allocation based reductions, development of local skills and as well as the sharings of services infrastructure and facilities with other the universities of external partners and should the becomes other cultural in universities. Universities should adopt the sustainable as the mantra and the incorporated SDG and into their the substitution and strategically and both in the daily admissions and in the teachings and research higher educations and cannot work in the isolations. It is must be the directly and integrated and with the socio economically development where such and the activities and the transactions has meaningful and the multiple impact on the SDGs and practice questions for and reframing the government delivery system through the directly benefit transfer scheme is other progressive state, but it has its the limitation to commitment UPSC to 2020. Editorial analysis mental health and the fundings information workers. The Hindus. Prelims. Current event of the national important and information workers and ILO and UNDP and the census. Census Bureau is in the Information and Employment Globalization Organization and WIEGO. National Crime Reports Bureau and NCRB and except remains GS paper 1 and 2 and the development and management of social sectors and the services related to the development and education etc. Article highlighted the theme of the World Mental Health Day October 10 and this year is the mental health as other universal human right. Informal workers they are the overlooked and when it the concern mental health. Insight on the issues and contact health WHO ascertain totally and of the health and to the realism of the mental and the social well-being and happiness and beyond the physical fitness and the absence of the diseases and the disabilities and we cannot the achieve health in its the wider and definition without the addressing health determination. Mental health it is the state of the mental well-being and that the enables and pupils to the cope with the stress of life and release and their the availability and learn well and the work well and contributed to their the community and mental health act 2017 mental health cares act in 2017 and features of the act and decriminalizations of the society and the restrictions on use of the electrical convulsives and therapy and the physiosurgery and the special excuses for the women and the children related to the admission treatment and sanitation and the person hygiene nominated representative provision of the advance directive international labour organization ILO study 15% of the working age and the adult globally live with other mental disorders and the decent works and influences mental health in other positive ways. Unemployment or the unstable and the precarious and the precarious and the employment and workplace. Discrimination or the poor and the particularly unsafe working and the environmental can all pose a risk to the worker mental health. Worker in low paid and the unrewarded or the insured jobs or workings. Working in the isolation. तूने पहनी है
कौन सी कहाँ कौन सी पे
मेरी जर्किन कहाँ गई है हाँ कहाँ गई Isolation are more likely to be the explosion by to the physio-social and risk and thus the comprising and there. मेरी जर्किन कहाँ गई हाँ
मास्क नहीं बन रहा
are more likely and to be the explosion by the physio-socio risk and thus the comprising there the mental health issues in the India's and the internal issues in India in the informal work forms. It is the accountant for more than 90% of the working populations and workers and often the operated and without regulatory protections and they work in the unsafe and working the environmental endured. Indian long hours and have the little access into the social or the financial protections, suffer high and the uncertainty and the deep and the precarity, face discriminations and thus the factors and further the undermines and the mental health and the limits and the access to the mental health care and the gender disparities are also taken 95% of Indian working women engaged in the information low paying and press carrying and unemployment and without the social protections and the suffering patriarchals and structures and the practices in there the social and the family spaces different studies different studies and the United States and Development Programs and UNDP and the unemployment and the poor qualities and the unemployment have the consistency and been the detrimentals to the mental health and the Lok Niti and groups and within the Central for the Study of the Developing Society interviews and 9,316 and youth aged and between the 15 to the 34 and years and across the 18 states in India it has the shown and that they are the highly subsensitive and to the negative emotions and youth employment and is of the highest in India and the stigma and around the unemployment and the significant impact there the mentals and health and ILO report it and the highlights and how highlighted how youth and the worker and the shifting to the more and the prosecutors and information work in accepting less pay and the poorer workers and conditions. The state of the inequalities in India and report 2020 and observed that the unemployment rate and actually increased and with the educational level and particularly and for the educational youth and boomers and who shows and the unemployment and rate of the 42% and half of the India's and population is of the workings and age the protected to remains the so far and to the decades and the census of the India's and 2011 shows that the 33 and millions elderly and people are the workings and post the retirement in the informal works. ILO on in the elderly and the unemployment in India's and show and hide the poverty among and them in the terms of the economics and the dependency and access to the financial assets and information worker face the mental distress and due to the accumulating and debt and the rising health cares and cost and with are the intellectuals and the in the mutually and reinforcing and women in enforcement unemployment globally and the organizing WIEGO and among the informal workers in Delhi and mostly the migrant and indicated that the recovery and post-COVID-19 remain the universal and among the formal workers and cohesions and the Rishabh. Keshav and the Siruju and India mental health and observatories and mental health and well-beings are the impacted and by the factors and such as the food security, access to the livelihood and financial stability and certain the scheme have the received the higher allocations and this the years other the such as the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme Manregas have been there the funding scheme slabs and National Crime Report Bureau and NCRB 2021 reported 26 of the pupils and who did by the suicide and were the daily wages earners in employment guarantees program and can improve the mental and health the outcomes. What are the initiatives related to the mental health and global and the initiatives and world mental and health day and WHO and the comprehensive WHO Comprehensive Mental Actions and Plan and 2013 and 20 Mental Health Atlas and Sustainable Development Goals SDG 3.4 and Indian Initiative National Mental Health Programs and Kiran Helplines and the Manas Mobiles app and the Manodarspan Way Forward. The absence of the propers and the finance. क्यों थोड़ा उड़गा बोलिए अच्छा way forward the absence of the proper and the financial and health care securities and among the working elderly and can the severity and impact there the physical and the mental health and the aggravating there the vulnerability. Social security can be the promoted can be the protecting the arming and to the ensure the relief and from the external shocks and code of the social security 2020. Social Security 2020 show how the glowings and the issues and concerns the Social Security of India and enforce the workforce and still remain the unheeded and India should the universalized and social the security the current code does not and state and this is the goal informal workers and despite their the significant contributed to the national income and are the perennially and exposed to the various economically physical and mental vulnerabilities and India's budgetary and allocation. India's budgetary and allocations and for the mental health current under the 1% of the total and health budget and has over the focused on the digital mental health programs and world the mental health reports in 2020. Observe the addressing mental health involve the strengthening community based the rate people and centered. Centered and recovery the oriented and the human rights and the oriented care, and there is and the urgent need for the proactive policies to the improvement mental health and programs and world mental health report 2022 observed and addressing the mental health involved and strengthening the community based care and the people centers recovery oriented and the human right and oriented care. There is and the urgent need for the proactive policies and to the improve mental health recognition and actions. This is the critical in the unfolding the basis human rights and to good habit to good health, including mental health and advancing to the sustainable development goal and SDG and especially the SDG 3 1 good health and the well-being and the SDGs and 8 and the decent work for all economic growth. Question for the practice. Beside being the moral imperative of the welfare state and primarily health structures is a necessary preconditions for sustainable development analysis. PSC 2021. Associated analysis case for the caste census in India. Editorial.